So imagine you're like standing in front of this massive, impossibly complex control panel.
Oh, right. Millions of blinking lights everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Dials and switches just representing everything happening in the world at this exact second. I mean, we're talking earthquakes, stock market fluctuations,
Yeah.
the sudden deployment of military forces.
All the heavy stuff.
Right. And usually when we try to make sense of this global dashboard, we use economics or geology or political science. But what if someone handed you a completely different user manual for this machine?
The very, very different manual.
Right. A manual that didn't look at like interest rates or tectonic plates, but looked entirely at the mathematical alignment of the planets. And today, we are testing that exact manual on the week of June 22nd through the 28th, 2026.
Which is, I mean, it forces a complete paradigm shift.
Not
We're
even-
dissecting the architecture of these predictions, looking at how the original author takes this millennia-old system and, well, weaponizes it, for lack of a better word, with highly specific modern mathematics to forecast world events.
Yeah, and that incredibly specific forecast comes from the AstrologCat blog, written by Gaye Harrison. Our mission today isn't just to, read you a daily horoscope. We're really exploring the hidden mechanics of this author's unique coefficient system to understand how she forecasts these major geopolitical movements, seismic risks, and global financial markets. Okay, let's unpack this.
And right out of the gate, I think it's crucial to understand our lens for this deep dive.
Definitely.
Because the source material makes some highly specific claims about nations, political figures, and sensitive global conflicts. We're here strictly to map out the author's mathematical framework, not to validate or endorse her specific political or financial viewpoints.
Right. We're not taking sides here, just reporting on the logic.
Exactly. We're essentially reverse engineering her engine to see how it supposedly processes real-world data.
Yeah, because before we can even talk about the really intense predictions for, say, June 23rd, I need to wrap my head around this math.
The coefficients.
Yeah, the coefficients. It sounds more like algebra than astrology, right? She's assigning numerical scores to planets and astrological houses based on their current positions.
That's the core of it, yeah.
But the source makes this really distinct rule right at the beginning. She says natal planets symbolize our own behaviors, while astrological houses symbolize the possibilities of what will happen to us. So why that strict division?
Well, it's basically a question of agency versus environment. In this framework, your natal planet, so where the planets were located the exact moment you were born, they represent your internal wiring.
Like your default settings.
Right. They dictate how you instinctively behave. The astrological houses, on the other hand, represent the external stage where your life plays out. It's the environment around you.
Okay, that makes sense for a person.
Yeah, so if a transit planet with a really high positive coefficient moves into one of your key houses, the math suggests the external environment is suddenly incredibly supportive of your inherent action.
Right. Okay, I follow that for a human being. I mean, I have a birthday, I have internal wiring. But hold on, how do you apply this to a non-human entity?
This is where it gets wild.
Because it sounds like they're assigning a credit score to the cosmos. But the source talks about the horoscope of a stock market or a fiat currency. You can't just, give a personality to a barrel of oil or a dollar bill, can you?
Actually, that is the cornerstone of what's known as mundane astrology, the astrology of world events. And it gets incredibly creative. To assign a behavioral profile to a non-human entity, the author looks at its founding date.
Oh, like when it was created.
Exactly. She calculates the exact moment an institution, a nation, or a currency officially came into existence. For instance, the text notes that the US dollar's natal Venus is in Cancer, and the Turkish lira's natal Venus is in Scorpio.
I see. So it's treating the signing of a charter or the launch of a currency as its first breath. And she gets incredibly granular with modern tech. She notes the euro's birthday is January 1st, 2002. She even calculates a natal chart for Bitcoin based on January 3rd, 2009. That gives Bitcoin a Capricorn Sun and Mars and a Pisces Venus. So we're really treating decentralized code like a living organism with a behavioral baseline.
We are. And what's fascinating here is the seamless blending of ancient esoteric traditions with highly modern digitized constructs. I mean, January 3rd, 2009, that's the date the Genesis block of Bitcoin was mined.
Right.
By giving that algorithm a birth chart, the author is arguing that Bitcoin has an inherent nature. A Capricorn sun, for example, traditionally represents rigid structure, ambition, and limits.
Oh, which actually mirrors the mathematical hard cap on the number of bitcoins that can ever exist.
Exactly, the 21 million cap. So she argues this entity will predictably react when the current planetary transits align with that inherent structure.
It is such a wild concept. But, once you accept the premise of this mathematical scoring system, the predictions for this specific week become incredibly intense.
They really do.
If this coefficient system acts as, like, a stress test for the universe, the author's math says June 23rd is when the system just buckles.
Yeah, it is unequivocally flagged as the lowest point of the week. The author calculates that the Moon, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Pluto all simultaneously hit a coefficient of -1.
Wait, a -1? Out of what? Like, how does this scale actually work? Is a -1 just a generically bad day?
It's not just quote-unquote bad, it represents a specific mechanical failure in her framework. The coefficients are this proprietary scoring scale. A positive number means energy flows smoothly and constructively,
Okay.
but a negative number indicates restriction, volatility, and bottlenecks. It's basically energy without an outlet.
Oh, I see.
So when 5 major celestial bodies drop to a -1 simultaneously, the framework suggests massive systemic pressure with absolutely nowhere to go.
And the physical world is where that pressure supposedly snaps, because the risks she lists for June 23rd aren't subtle at all. We're talking about a spike in severe weather, accidents, and specifically severe earthquakes on weak fault lines.
Very specific warnings.
Yeah, she even calculates an earthquake intersection point starting around June 20th leading up to this. But how does a mathematician using astrology calculate an earthquake? Like, what variables is she actually measuring?
She's tracking the zodiac sign of Scorpio.
Scorpio.
Right. In traditional astrological mechanics, Scorpio is a water sign, but it's heavily associated with the subterranean, depths, secrets, and literally the underground.
Oh, wow.
So the author specifically tracks the coefficients of planets interacting with Scorpio to determine seismic risk. The theory is that when the planetary energies interacting with this underground sign drop into the negatives, that bottlenecked energy manifests physically. The physical Earth itself experiences stress and rupture.
That's terrifying.
And along with the geological warnings, she also points to a potential rise in human volatility, like violence and terror events on this exact day.
It's incredibly heavy. And what's interesting is how she filters this massive earth-shattering pressure down to the personal level. Like, for you listening at home, she gives specific advice for people with Leo and Aquarius placements.
Yes, she breaks it down nicely.
For Leos, for example, she warns them to be highly vigilant on June 23rd regarding their first house, which symbolizes physical health and the body, and their seventh house, which governs partnerships and marriages. So the translation is basically, the math says your body and your relationships are under immense pressure that Tuesday.
But this is really where the precision of the coefficient system comes in. It's totally compartmentalized.
How do you mean?
Well, the text points out that a Leo's ninth house, which falls in the sign of Aries, actually remains lucky despite the overall low scores. And the ninth house governs higher learning, international matters, and the legal system.
Wait, really? So you could theoretically have a terrible day physically, get into a huge blowout fight with your partner, but simultaneously win a major lawsuit.
Exactly. Because the -1 coefficients are hitting the specific geometric angles of the first and seventh houses for Leo, but completely bypassing the ninth house, it treats human experience not as a single monolith of good or bad luck, but as a complex circuit board where certain switches are flipped off while others remain completely on.
Okay, so if the 23rd is a day where the system is bottlenecked and failing, what happens when you overload the system with positive pressure? Because just 4 days later, on June 27th, the math completely inverts.
It does. It's a massive swing.
We move from the lowest valleys to the absolute peak of the mountain.
The planetary spikes here are dramatic. The author calculates that Pluto hits a +4 coefficient. Meanwhile, Jupiter and Neptune hit a +5, which she explicitly labels as super.
Super plus 5. Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because she doesn't just say, it's going to be a super day. She takes those massive power spikes and overlays them onto the natal charts of global superpowers.
Right.
Which is such a stark way to view conflict. If you strip away all the ideology, the author just treats these nations and military alliances like variables in a physics equation. And just as a quick reminder to you listening, we are strictly analyzing the text's claims here regarding these political figures and nations. taking absolutely no sides, just reporting on how the framework is being applied.
Absolutely. To understand how she calculates the geopolitics here, we have to look at what Pluto and Jupiter represent mechanically.
Yeah.
Pluto is the planet of profound transformation. It destroys the old to build the new. Jupiter, on the other hand, is the great multiplier. It represents massive expansion and magnification.
So how does that apply to the actors on the board? The source notes that Turkey has its natal Mars in Libra, and NATO has its natal Mars in Aries.
Yes.
And because of those specific astrological placements, both are predicted to receive highly positive, expansive effects from Pluto and Jupiter on the 27th.
Right, so let's break down that formula. Mars is the planet of action, aggression, and the military. So when the author sees Jupiter, that +5 multiplier, interacting favorably with the natal Mars of Turkey and NATO, she translates that mathematical expansion into real-world action.
Like troop movements.
Exactly. She suggests this algorithmic spike could manifest as cross-border exercises, massive new projects, or direct military action. Their inherent behavioral planets for warfare and action are being supercharged by the environment.
But the math cuts both ways, right? Because the author calculates that Israel has a Taurus sun and a Leo Mars. And she predicts that on that exact same day, Israel will face what she translates as deadly effects from Pluto.
Yes, that's what the text says.
So why does Israel get hit with danger while NATO gets expansion when they are both existing under the exact same sky?
It all comes down to the angles of interaction. Taurus, which is Israel's sun sign in this system, represents fixed, stubborn stability. Pluto, as we said, represents destructive transformation.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. When a +4 Pluto energy hits a Taurus baseline at a difficult angle, the math dictates a violent disruption of stability. Conversely, the text notes that Iran, with its natal Mars in Pisces, gets hit with a harmonious angle from that +5 Jupiter energy. So the prediction for Iran is military strengthening.
It's just fascinating to observe how she constructs this geopolitical chess match entirely out of math. And it scales down to individual politicians, too.
It really does.
Like President Erdogan, who is a Pisces, is predicted to have a high coefficient that day. The author translates this mathematical advantage into him being more giving and constructive.
Right.
And then there's Özgür Özel, a prominent Turkish political figure, who she notes has a Virgo sun and a Libra Mars. On June 27th, he gets hit with highly positive effects from Jupiter, Pluto, and Mercury. Her direct interpretation. He's going to get very positive news from the legal system.
And that perfectly illustrates the underlying philosophy of her framework. The exact same +5 Jupiter coefficient is used to predict a military expansion for a massive global alliance like NATO and a favorable court ruling for one specific politician.
It's all connected.
Exactly. The framework assumes that macro geopolitics and micropersonal events are fundamentally tethered to the exact same cosmic algorithm.
Okay, so if this math scales from a personal court case to NATO troop movements, how does it apply to the most chaotic human system of all, the global markets? Because the author devotes a huge portion of this forecast to finance. So what does this all mean for the market specifically?
This is where we have to look exclusively at Neptune. As we discussed, Neptune hits that super +5 coefficient on June 27th. In astrological mechanics, Neptune governs illusions and dreams, but tangibly, it governs liquids and boundless intangible things.
Liquids and intangibles.
Right.
Yeah.
The author predicts this massive Neptune spike will directly act as a multiplier on global commodities, particularly oil and digital assets.
And she literally tracks it day by day with these coefficient scores. I was looking at the chart she provided for Brent oil. It doesn't just say, oil goes up.
Yeah.
On Monday, June 22nd, she calculates oil's coefficient at 18.
Yep, starting at 18.
But by Saturday, June 27th, the exact day, Neptune hits that +5. Brent oil's coefficient skyrockets to a massive 42. She writes explicitly that oil will rise extremely. But wait, how do we get from a +5 Neptune to exactly 42 for a barrel of oil?
It's a composite score. The author isn't just looking at Neptune in a vacuum. She's taking the baseline natal score of the commodity itself, its foundational birth chart, and running it against the current +5 transit of Neptune.
Oh, okay.
The mathematical interaction between the commodity's baseline and the environmental spike produces that composite 42. It's essentially a way of quantifying market momentum.
And it isn't just liquids like oil. She applies that Neptune boundless energy to precious metals and crypto. Gold and silver are both predicted to see coefficient spikes and price increases around the 24th and the 27th.
Huge jumps.
Yeah, and circling back to our earlier point about the birth charts of algorithms, she tracks Bitcoin and Ethereum day by day. Bitcoin's coefficient jumps from an 11 on Friday to a 20 on Saturday the 27th.
And Ethereum jumps from a 12 to an 18 on those same days. She is explicitly predicting a crypto rally based purely on the alignment of Neptune with the founding dates of those blockchains.
It's such a bold way to forecast finance, but I do want to point out a very specific and highly volatile prediction she makes regarding the Turkish stock market, the BST 100.
Oh yes, the BST 100, according to her framework, it was born on April 5, 2013. That gives the stock market an incredibly fiery natal chart. An Aries Sun, Aries Mars, and Aries Venus.
Pure fire.
Yeah.
Total aggressive energy. And the author predicts that this specific stock market is going to take a hit and drop on that turbulent negative coefficient day we talked about earlier, June 23rd. The mouth says the fire gets choked out.
Right, the bottleneck.
But she calculates it will rebound and rise by June 26th as the planetary pressure lifts. Now, I have to mention, right under this incredibly specific day-by-day financial timeline, the author drops a very quick disclaimer stating, "This is not investment advice," and notes that there can be a shift of plus or minus 3 days in the manifestation of these events.
Which is, a necessary safety net when you're dealing with global finance. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the inclusion of that stock market prediction, along with the day-by-day crypto and oil forecasts, it highlights something profound about the human mind.
What's that?
Well, global finance is arguably one of the most volatile, chaotic arenas of human existence. It is driven heavily by invisible forces like fear, greed, and panic.
Totally unpredictable on a day-to-day basis. We've built entirely separate algorithms just to try and front-run human panic.
Exactly. And what this author's coefficient system offers is the comfort of mathematical predictability. By tracking these numbers day by day from an 18 to a 42, it imposes a rhythm onto the chaos. It suggests that the erratic behavior of day traders or the sudden swings of algorithmic trading aren't actually erratic at all.
They're just following the math.
Right. They are just predictable responses to the measurable gravitational pull of planets like Neptune.
It's the ultimate attempt to find order in the noise. Man, we've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by learning the mechanics of this unique coefficient system, understanding the mathematical division between the natal planets that drive inherent behavior and the astrological houses that set the environmental stage.
Then we analyzed the mechanics behind the intense warnings for June 23rd, dissecting how the author mathematically links negative planetary scores in the sign of Scorpio to physical subterranean pressure and seismic danger.
Right, the earthquakes. And then we explored the massive positive planetary waves of June 27th. We broke down how the author applies those +4 and +5 power spikes to predict expansive military movements for NATO, violent disruptions for Israel, and sudden composite score surges in the prices of oil, gold, and Bitcoin. It is a wildly intricate, mathematically dense system.
It really is. And looking at all of this, this raises an important question for you to consider as you go about your week. As we continue to build increasingly opaque, complex systems like global financial markets, driven by high-frequency trading algorithms or decentralized cryptocurrencies that nobody truly controls, we find ourselves grasping for new ways to understand them.
We really do.
So when we assign an astrological birth chart to an algorithm like Bitcoin or a military alliance like NATO, are we just projecting ancient mythologies onto modern complexities because we're overwhelmed by the data? Or is there something profound about humanity's enduring need to believe that absolutely everything from a sudden earthquake to a spike in crypto prices is part of a grand, measurable cosmic design?
That is the perfect thought to leave you with, because at the end of the day, whether you're staring at a Bloomberg terminal, a seismograph, or a chart of the zodiac, you're really just looking for the right user manual to help you understand that massive, blinking control panel of human existence. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we helped you extract some fascinating new perspectives today. We'll catch you next time.